Good evening once again, everyone. And now we will be discussing about nature of contract. Let me just first share my screen. So as you can see, contract binds both parties involved in the contract. So Article 1308 states that the contract must bind both contracting parties. Its validity or compliance cannot be left to the will of one of them. So always remember this provision, no? Na hindi raw maaaring, ayan, hindi maaaring isa sa kanila ang magiging bahala doon sa compliance o validity. Kinakailangan pareho sila at hindi sa kanilang kakayanan. So, paano ba natin masasabi na hindi pa pwede na yung kontrata ay masasabing fulfilled sa will ng isa lang sa mga parties? So, contracts entered by and between the parties must bind both parties in order that it can be enforced against each other. This is also known as mutuality of contract, meaning both parties are obliged to perform their obligations to each other. Hence, its validity or compliance also cannot be left to the will of one of them. This principle is based on the essential equality of parties. It is elementary rule that no party can renounce or violate the law of the contract without the consent of the other. Pagkaayaw ng isa, hindi po pwede na yung usapan nyo na dalawa kayo ang nagkasundo ay mababago. Dapat pareho din kayo na pumapayag. Kaya nga mutuality of contract, dapat may mutual understanding kayo. Ibig sabihin, kung ano yung terms, kung ano yung conditions ng contract na pinasukan ninyong dalawa, kayo din dapat dalawa ang magsasabi na okay na ito. Anumang pagbabago, dapat kayong dalawa ang magkakasundo tungkol dito. So, example, Gaia and Laura entered into a contract to sell whereby Gaia binds herself to sell her only parcel of land to Laura if Gaia decides to leave the States. For the States, the contract is void because the fulfillment of the condition depends on the will of Gaia. Again, sabi nga natin kanina, hindi po pwede na yung compliance will be left to the will of one of the party. Dapat ibang bagay. Pwedeng hindi nila pareho kayang i-manipulate yung outcome ng kanilang condition or may ibang taong gagawa nito para sa kanila. In this case, nagkasundo daw si Gaia and si Laura na magkakaroon sila ng contract to sell. Ano yung nilalaman ng contract to sell? Na si Gaia daw magbebenta ng kanyang kaisa-isang lupa kay Laura kapag si Gaia daw ay nakapag-desisyon na siya ay pupunta sa States. At dahil ito ay nasa will lang ni Gaia, pwedeng pumunta si Gaia sa States, pwede namang hindi. So dahil sa kanya lang nakasalalay ang pagka-perform o pagdating ng condition, pag-meet ng condition, then this condition or this contract is void. No? Maaaring sigurong ilagay nila dyan kung maa-approve. Maa-approve. Yan. Si Gaia ng kanyang visa. Yan. Pag ganyan ng usapan na ibebenta ni Gaia yung kanyang property kay Laura kapag na-approve siya ng visa papunta ng Amerika, yun pa pwedeng gawing condition. Kasi wala sa kapangyarihan ni Gaia na ma-approve siya sa visa. Ang mag-a-approve dyan syempre yung authority, di ba? Yung government, hindi si Gaia. Kaya hindi sa kanya lang nakasalalay yung pag-fulfill o pag-meet ng condition. Pero sa example natin, dahil si Gaia lang ang mayroong will kung siya ba ay aalis sa puntang states, then that condition is void and uh, the contract to sell is also void. Okay? Now, Article 1309 states that the determination of the performance may be left to a third person whose decision shall not be binding until it has been made known to both contracting parties. Pwede rin na yung performance ng obligation o ng condition, ay nakasalalay kay third person. So siya magsasabi kung nagkaroon na nga ng performance, no? So siya lang ang pwede magsabi, third person dapat siya, no? For example, nag-uusap sila tungkol sa presyo ng bahay, si A tsaka si B nagbebentahan. Si A, ibebenta niya yung bahay niya kay B. Si B ang magbibigay ng pera. Ang tanong, magkano yung bahay? So, pwede silang kumuha ng isang third party, si C, na magsasabi na, oy, yung bahay ay 1 million. So, dahil nakasalalay sa kanya, yung pagkasabi, pwedeng mabili ito ni B ng 1 million at pwedeng ibenta ni A ng 1 million. Sakali lang na ibibigay nila yung determination sa third person. Okay? Now, Article 1310, it states that the determination shall not be obligatory if it is evidently inequitable. In such case, the court shall decide what is equitable under the circumstances. For example, sinabi ni A na ibebenta niya yung bahay niya kay B kapag nanalo ang Lakers laban sa Golden State Warriors. Nanalo nga yung Lakers laban sa Golden State Warriors. So dapat ibenta ni A yung kanyang bahay kay B. Ang tanong, magkakano? Hindi sila nagkakasundo ng presyo. So nagtanong sila kay C. Ang sabi kasi ni A, gusto ko ibenta 10 million. Ang sabi ni B, gusto ko ibenta mo sa akin ng 1 million. Dahil hindi sila nagkakasundo sa presyo, tatanungin nila ngayon si C. C, magkakano ba sa palagay mo ang bahay? Si C, isang expert, for example, no? So, kung siya magsasabi, ang halaga ng bahay ay 500,000. So, kapag ganyan, masyado siyang inequitable. Why? Ang hinihingi nga ni A, 10 million eh. Si B nga, kaya magbayad 1 million pagkatapos sasabihin ni C, 500,000 lang. So, merong malulugi sa dalawa. So, pagka ganyan na nangyari, pwedeng pumasok si courts para magsabi kung magkakano ang presyo. At kung ano ang sabihin ni courts, yun ang masusunod. Okay? So, punta tayo sa susunod na article. So sabi, the determination of performance by third person, as a rule, compliance with a contract cannot be left to the will of one of the contracting parties. Sabi natin kanina yan. However, the determination of its performance may be left to a third person after it has been made known to both contracting parties. Provided further, the parties are bound by the determination if it is evidently inequitable or unjust. When the third person acted in bad faith or by mistake, the court shall decide what is equitable under the circumstances. So isang example natin ulit, Gaia sold their parcel of land to Laura. It was agreed that Maya, a real estate appraiser, would be the one to determine the reasonable price of the land. Maya then fixed the price after considering the factors affecting the value of the land and informing both contracting party that the decision is just and suitable. If the decision made by Maya is manifestly inequitable, the court may be called upon to decide what is equitable. So yan yung example natin. Okay? So Article 1311, contracts that affect only between the parties, their assigns and heirs, except in case where the rights and obligations arising from the contract are not transmissible by their nature, or by stipulation, or by provision of law. The heir is not liable beyond the value of the property he received from the decedent, or he received yan. If a contract should contain some stipulation in favor of a third person, he may demand its fulfillment provided he communicated his acceptance to the obliger before its revocation. A mere incidental benefit or interest of a person is not sufficient. The contracting parties must have clearly and deliberately conferred a favor upon a third person. So, sabi natin, there are cases where third person may be affected by a contract. Ito at ano-ano yan? Ito yan. Isa-isayin natin. Yung 1 and 2, yan ay napag-usapan na natin kanina, no? Number 1, determining the performance of both parties. And number 2, contracts containing a stipulation in favor of a third person. Yung number 3 naman, according to Article 1312, in contracts creating real rights, and 1313 in contracts entered into to defraud creditor, and 1314 in contracts which have been violated at the inducement of the third person. So, for example, Gaia mortgaged her parcel of land in favor of Laura as collateral for her debt. The mortgage is duly registered. Later on, Gaia sold the same land to Tito. In this case, Tito bought the land subject to the mortgage constituted thereon. Tito, although a stranger in the mortgage, being a real right, the property on the right of Laura to the mortgage. So, ibig sabihin, si Gaia daw ay nagsanla kay Laura dahil may utang siya, di ba? Tapos, pagkatapos niya isanla kay Laura yung kanyang lupa, yung lupa din na yun na sinanla ni Gaia ay ibinenta niya kay Tito. No? So dahil ibinenta ni Gaia yung kanyang lupa kay Tito, si Laura na pinagkakautangan, bagamat si Tito at si Laura ay hindi magkakilala, stranger sila, di ba? Dahil hindi naman si Tito ang nangutang kay Laura at si Laura hindi naman nagpautang kay Tito. Pero dahil si Tito ay bumili ng lupa ni Gaia, nalilipat din sa kanya yung obligation to pay Laura the mortgage amount. Why? Dahil kasama yan, dahil naka-register yung bentahan na yan at yung pagbebenta ng lupa, makikita mo naman sa titulo kung yan ba ay nakasanla. So kasama doon sa binili mo yung sanla, no? Kaya ang sisingilin ni Laura ay si Tito na kasi nasa kanya na yung pananagutan dahil siya na ang may-ari ng lupa na isinanla ni Gaia kay Laura. Okay? So those are the cases where third person may be affected by a contract. So again, see you for another video about law on obligations and contracts. Bye-bye!
For more ICCT College's video updates, please subscribe and click the notification button.